The Eye of Terror is a gigantic warp rift, a churning superstorm of psychic energy where the elements of the Immaterium clash with real space. Spanning nearly 20 light-years across, the Eye is by far the largest and most dominating warp rift in the galaxy, and is located to the galactic northwest of Terra in a region known as the Segmentum Obscurus. The Eye of Terror is home to some of the darkest and most feared monstrosities ever encountered by the Imperium, and is the largest concentration of Chaos forces in the known galaxy, including the traitor legions of Chaos Space Marines and heretics who fled from Terra following the events of the Horus Heresy. The Eye's proximity to Imperial space means that incursions of Chaos forces into the surrounding star systems of the Cadian Gate are common, the largest of which was launched in the closing era of the 41st millennium by Abaddon the Despoiler. It was known as the 13th Black Crusade, and marked the greatest assault by the forces of Chaos upon the Imperium of Man since the heresy itself. In its wake, the Cadian Gate was breached, and the fortress world of Cadia finally fell, and was lost to the servants of Chaos. As the Eye continued to expand, conventional methods of travel and communication through the warp suffered heavily as a result. Eventually, the titanic forces at work tore open a scar across the galaxy, spreading from the Eye of Terror all the way to the eastern fringe, leading to the creation of the Great Rift that divided the Imperium in half. The Eye of Terror is not a naturally occurring phenomenon, and occupies a region of space that once belonged to the ancient Eldari Empire. The warp storm was a result of a catastrophic psychic shockwave unleashed in the birth of the Chaos god Slaanesh, which almost wiped out the entire Eldari civilization over 11,000 years ago. The shockwave was so great in magnitude that it couldn't be fully contained within the warp, and splintered out into reality through the minds of the Eldari who perished on the homeworlds of their lost empire that now reside within the Eye of Terror itself. The psychic tremor opened up countless areas across the galaxy where the warp and the physical universe intertwine, but the Eye is by far the biggest and most significant of these warp rifts. The horrific events of the 13th Black Crusade saw the collapse of the fortress world of Cadia and the loss of the Necron-built Cadian pylons on its surface. It was these mysterious obelisks that held back the growth of the Eye of Terror, and when they were lost, the Cadian Gate was overwhelmed by the forces of Chaos, allowing the Eye of Terror to expand across the galaxy. Eventually, the galaxy was divided by a new warp rift of immense proportion called the Great Rift, spreading from its heart in the Eye of Terror all the way to the Hadex anomaly of the Jericho Reach in the eastern fringe. Those who found themselves on the Terran side of the Great Rift saw it as a tainted scar stretching across the sky. To those unfortunate souls on the far side, it's more akin to something far worse. The very gates of hell from where the terrible creatures of the Immaterium cross over into reality. This dark region has been designated as the Imperium Nihilus, or the Dark Imperium, where the light of the Astronomicon is obscured by a psychic maelstrom of nightmares. Although the Eye of Terror spans across 20,000 light-years, the region of space-time contained within the superstorm of warp energy constitutes its own reality, existing within both the material universe and the immaterial realm. Planets and entire star systems exist within the Eye of Terror, but are not bound by conventional scientific principles. In these fluctuating planes, time, matter, and energy are all indistinct and blurred with each other. Worlds within the Eye are known as demon worlds. Each of these planets seems to have its own bizarre sub-reality, whose physical aspects are tainted by the Chaos God worshipped by its inhabitants. The centre of the Eye is defined by a feature known as the Byssos, a hole in the fabric of reality through which raw chaos energy spills out into the material universe. The whole region surrounding the Eye of Terror is a turbulent and distorted maelstrom of psychic energy. For humanity, it was almost impossible to navigate through, and so, Imperial starships actively avoid the area whenever possible. Due to the warp's instability, vessels that do venture close to the Eye through the warp can be thrown far off course, or become caught in a temporal rift and consumed by the warp as they travel through. The warp storms within the Eye itself are so intense that starships lose all directional control and steering ability. The legions of Chaos Renegades and Heretic Astartes who call the Eye of Terror home simply launch their voidcraft directly into the swirling abyss, trusting fortune and the whims of the ruinous powers to carry them to their enemies. This makes most Chaos attacks on Imperial sectors of space very unpredictable, often occurring on worlds far across the galaxy from the Eye. For the Traitor legions and heretics, this hellish place has been both a place of exile and a sanctuary from Imperial justice following their defeat on Terra over 10 millennia ago. Mortals who seek refuge within the Eye are constantly exposed to the effects of chaos, and become physically warped and mutated as their bodies come to reflect their flawed inner natures. Due to the looming threat of a Chaos incursion, the Imperium has established a military presence in almost every star system within 500 light-years of the Eye. These forces can range from lightly defended listening outposts to heavily fortified bunker complexes and planetary defense systems. Before it was lost to the onslaught of the 13th Black Crusade, the fortress world of Cadia was the closest planet to the best-known stable gateway into the Eye, and was one of the most strategically important planets of the Imperium. As a result, it was heavily fortified and garrisoned with the best guardsmen the Imperium could offer. Cadia acted as the first line of defense against any Chaos incursion into real space, and after successfully repelling many focused attempts, it became known as the Cadian Gate. The stability of the Cadian Gate was created by the network of Cadian pylons scattered throughout the region. The advanced technology contained within the pylons was established by the ancient race of the Necrons millions of years ago. They were powerful instruments designed to seal off real space from all interaction with the Immaterium once and for all. Despite the region of stability, passing through the gate into the warp was still a perilous undertaking, and far fewer starships returned from the gateway than the number who entered it. The final fate of Cadia, the linchpin of the defense systems surrounding the Cadian Gate and many other Imperial star systems, was eventually decided in the closing years of the 41st millennium. Despite the valiant efforts of the Imperial defenders, which included reinforcements from the Black Templars, Dark Angels, Space Wolves and Imperial Fists, the fortress world of Cadia was overrun and fell to the forces of Abaddon the Despoiler. Thus began the period known as the Noctis Eterna, the Blackness, when the light of the Astronomicon began to fade and the Imperium was divided in half by the birth of the Great Rift.